having breakfast. In fact, some of us are finishing breakfast. And we'll join you in just a moment as we get on the bus and take a city tour of the city of Istanbul.
To start with, this is a city on two continents, as you know. It looks similar in some ways to San Francisco, having the hills and all that, especially in the old town. And you have one queen over there, Golden Gate. We have two of these queens, the first and the second Bosphorus suspension bridges. And so there are some similarities if you look at it that way. Population-wise, it's more than 10 million now. A city on two continents, Asia and Europe. The Asian side, this time you're not going from Istanbul. That means you have to be crossing the Bosphorus either by boat or go over one of the two suspension bridges connecting the Asian and European sides, in which case then you say I am from Asia to Europe or vice versa. The European side, where we are, is historically divided into two sections for an easy and better understanding of the layout of the town. Old Town and New Town. Your hotel is located in the New Town. All the monuments we are going to be visiting today are in the Old Town. The so-called town is somewhere out there. You see the fog, the mist. Down there, that precipitation is the Golden Horn. It hasn't rained recently, so it has accumulated and precipitated a little bit. In 2 days' time we will have rain, then it will clear up. So you see the whiteness over there, that is supposed to be the Golden Horn, to your imagination. And just the other side of that, the Golden Horn is like a deep inlet, a small bay, or a like 4 mile, river, if you want to call it that large river. So it goes all the way to the right and behind the bus, let's put it that way, in the shape of a horn. And we call this, on the map of Turkey, it's very difficult to see because it's a small one, of course. So this is the Golden Horn, and then when you go over the Golden Horn, you enter the Old Town. By the way, this hotel on the left-hand side, the green building, is the oldest yet very interesting building. It's called Palace Hotel. The nice thing about it is you've heard about the Orient Express train station. And the guests, the clients who took this trip from Europe to Istanbul used to stay at that hotel, including like Agatha Christie and some of the other VIPs of that time. Now, as we get closer, you see the dockyard over there to your right and down. It begins to clear up a little bit. So once we go over one of the bridges, I told you there are 4 of them, one of which is Galata, the other one Atatürk, we took last night, to come to this part of the town. And then the third one, the old Galata Bridge, which you will not see on the maps. Even if you buy a map of Istanbul, it will only show this Galata Bridge, Atatürk Bridge, and the Golden Horn Bridge, 3 of them. The 4th one is recently restored. It was at the place or to the left of the present Galata Bridge. There was a fire and it was a floating bridge. The central part sank. Therefore, they had to dismantle and move it away. And later on, it was restored, reconstructed. So because of this nostalgic moments of the town, they use this bridge now at a different place, but of course the historical value is all lost along with this one, as we use the new Galata Bridge now. And it's not a floating bridge, it's on solid steel piles actually, pillars, so it's wider and more efficient, of course, to cope with present day requirements of the traffic. Now, coming down this way, you see the Golden Horn better. And last night you saw the illumination of the Mosque of Suleiman, the Pigeon Mosque, etc., Hagia Sophia in the distance. But nowadays, of course, especially in the morning when it's so misty, it's more difficult to see. There won't be any illumination. And maybe if it's clear enough, you can see these buildings. So this is Atatürk Bridge. This is the one we took last night from the airport to Taksim Square and to our hotel. So going over this bridge, you go into the old town, which makes it like San Francisco with 7 hills, or like Rome. On your left-hand side, in the water, that's the Galata Bridge, which you can see briefly. You see the slim minarets in the haziness of the Pigeon Mosque. It was beautifully illuminated last night. And behind it is Saint Sophia, Topkapı, etc., which you cannot see. Only in the foreground, on your left, but in the foreground, over the hill, through the mist again, you may see the minarets, and the dome of Suleiman the Magnificent, the famous imperial sultan of the 16th century. The city has 52 different names in her long history. 3 of them are important and being repeated to make it easier for everybody to understand. We have the first settlements at the tip of the peninsula where we have Topkapı Palace today. Then there is another settlement on the Asian side which is called Kadıköy today, or Kalkidon in antiquity, the country of the blind. That part is even older than the tip of the peninsula of today's Old Town. But nevertheless, you have the first settlement. Then, after the Trojan War, the colonization of Asia Minor started by the Greek civilizations, as a result of which Byzas was the general, let's put it that way, the adventurer who came down with his army, colonized the tip of the peninsula and the local people over there. So he had his first dynasty, so to speak, which was called the dynasty of Byzas, or from his name Byzantium was the first name of the city, historically speaking. To be more precise about it, 667 BC. So you're talking about the history of this town, recorded history of this town, as early as 7th century BC. For a long while, especially during this Greek civilization, followed by the coming of Alexander the Great, we will speak about him in detail, of course, a couple of times in Anatolia. Not today, we don't have time for it. He came down to Anatolia, or Asia Minor, in 334 BC, bringing the Hellenistic culture and civilization to the local people. As of that moment, it's called Hellenistic civilization, but the name of the city has remained the same, Byzantium. Then this is followed by the Romans. Let's make a comma over here. The building on the right hand side, the central arch, is an entrance, as you can see, is the Spice Bazaar or Egyptian Bazaar. This is the Pigeon Mosque on the right hand side from 17th century. The guidebooks say pigeon because of the pigeons you see all around. In Egypt they hunt and eat them. Here for us the pigeons represent peace. Therefore we never hunt them, we never eat them. On the left hand side is the Galata Bridge, and here you have one train going to the suburbs. It cannot be the subway because of the historical remains buried under these buildings. You have these stations, as you can see, numbered 1, 2, 3. You can take a boat here from, like the first one, to Secutary on the Asian side. You've heard about this name historically, with Florence Nightingale as being the famous nurse working at one of the hospitals during the Crimean War. The second one is to Kadıköy or Kalkidon, that is the business center on the Asian side, and the third one is to take you up the Bosphorus, so to speak. And driving to the right hand side of this road, now facing you ahead, but very soon it will be on the left hand side with the dome structure, a combination of red brick and stone in between. This is the Orient Express train station, the famous station. This is the last point of disembarkation if you take a train from Europe down to Turkey. Or if you're heading toward Europe, this is the place to take the train, to get on the train and to go out into Europe. From here, if you want to go further, central part of Turkey, like you can see on this map, Istanbul being way up here, then you change the station. There is one more station like that on the Asian side, which is to your left at this moment, and you take the train to go all the way to the eastern part of Turkey. It connects. One part goes all the way east, the other one southeast, going into present day Iraq and Baghdad. So it says Istanbul Gar, that's the French word, you know, for train station. And this is the pink building, red pink building, which we call the Orient Express train station. And now you're in the old town, so we have a lot of shops, stationery shops and book shops, also selling all these video cameras and regular cameras and white durable goods, of course, for the local people. This is quite a popular area, and very soon this area is going to be packed with the people, you know. that you can hardly walk without hitting somebody. So as you watch this, let me come back to this, to the continuation of the history of the town. As I was just telling you, the first town was called Byzantium by the Greek colonists under the leadership of Byzas. Then Hellenistic period of Alexander the Great, and in about 1st century BC, this is replaced by the Roman civilization. When we go toward Pergamon, I will give you more details about this. In 133 BC, Romans finally took over Anatolia, or the Pergamon kingdom of that time, and gradually Roman face of civilization started on this land as well as in this city, all the way up to 4th century AD. So from 7th century to 4 BC to 4th century, early 4th century AD, it's always been the city of Byzantium. Another comma. Why do people line up over here? Here, these are the retired people who are going up to this regional directorate over here, to submit their petitions for retirement if they have reached the age, which is 55 for men and 50 for women, or if they are already retired, they are taking their pension, as we call it, monthly pension. By the way, Istanbul City Governor's office to your left, here, this is another historical building from the 19th century, and we have the Iranian consulate. The embassies are all in Ankara, where we go tomorrow. This is the Iranian consulate. We don't like them very much, by the way.
You are right.
Now, in 4th century AD, when the Roman Empire of that time, because it expanded so much, they could not control this vast empire, they wanted to split it. The emperor wanted to split, and each section to be ruled by one of his sons, so it was divided into two as Eastern and Western Roman Empire in 395 AD. But just before that, before the official division, in 324 AD, Constantine the Great moved up the throne. He was coronated over here, and as of that moment, he changed this historical name of the town from Byzantium to Constantinopolis. Polis, as you know in Greek, means city. Constantine is the name of the emperor, so it became the city of Constantine the Great. And because of the long pronunciation, gradually it was reduced down to Constantinople instead of Polis. And he was the first emperor, of course, to change the name of the city. He dedicated the city to himself in that respect by having city walls around the town, building the first sanctuary or the church of Saint Sophia, etc. We will speak more about this. And this name was used throughout the history all the way up to 1453, which is mid-15th century. Finally, the Turks, the Ottomans, took over the city, gave an end to the long history of this Byzantine Empire, or the Eastern Roman Empire, from 4th century AD to mid-15th century, 1100 years in other words. So this way, the city was called Istanbul by the Ottomans instead of Constantinople, and it is still called Istanbul. With respect to the name of Istanbul, there are a couple of stories, two frequently mentioned, one of which is like a sort of slight variation of a word in Greek meaning Stempoli. Stempoli meaning downtown city center, so it was changed to Istanbul. This is the Greek side, or the Greek version of the history, the story, which according to the local people do not make much sense. The other one is a derivation and a slight variation of the pronunciation of the word called Islambol. Islam meaning Muslim, Islam. Bol means lots, abundance, a lot of. This makes sense for the local people in the sense that when the city was conquered, it was a Christian city, as you know. It was the center of the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate. The Patriarch was over here. To increase the Muslim population in town against the Christians, by the order of the conqueror Mehmet II, Muslims were moved to this large city from various parts of the empire. So gradually the Muslim population increased over the Christian population, and because of this the word was used, Istanbul, where a lot of Muslims began to live, and this gave way to Istanbul. And it served as the imperial capital of the Ottoman Empire from 1453 until 1923, when the Ottoman Empire was destroyed after the First World War, and a new country called Turkey was founded by our national leader Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. That's the talk of tomorrow in Ankara, which is the capital city. So by saying this much, we, in a very brief way, as we go along the course, we get down to the details depending on the area of what we say, and not only going back to 7th century BC, but it will be even way back. This falls into the Roman Empire about 3rd century AD, beginning of the 3rd century, about 203. We have Septimus Severus of that time, who was the ruler, the emperor of the Romans. Of course, he was in Rome. So this huge area was dedicated to him. There was no blue mosque or anything like that, because this is from early 17th century. So in the past, this area was totally different. It was a huge area where we have the blue mosque over there, the building back there, as well as these buildings. We had the seats, like the Romans say, tribune, the seats for the people enclosed on 3 sides. Only that side was open. And there was a monumental archway, 3 arches over there, decorating the entrance of this hippodrome. And they used to come all the way down, go about 500 yards behind the building. It still continues with the retaining wall, etc. They used to make that swift U-turn and go out towards Saint Sophia, where we have over there. The place of Blue Mosque was the palace grounds for the Byzantine emperors. From here all the way down to the seaside, which is the Sea of Marmara on that side. So downhill, they used to live in this huge palace, having 6 different courtyards, etc. So you had the palace. We see this minaret over here.
donde se ha hablado un montón de cosas. O sea, están en una parte bastante importante, aunque no estamos...
The trophies to the winners afterwards. So it was somewhere out there. It was totally different. So this was the idea. In 4th century, with Constantine the Great moving to power, then it became the fact that 100,000 people could be seated over here. 4th century AD, 1,600 years ago, 100,000 people could come and assemble in this hippodrome to watch these races, etc. Can you imagine that? Such a large city from earlier times like that one. So it has changed greatly, actually. During the Ottoman period, being such a huge square, it was used for other purposes as well. And the army used to assemble over here before going to the battlefields, and sometimes the army is taking exercises, etc. So it has changed greatly in that respect. We have some of these monuments, adding to the beauty of this town from earlier times. Way out there, you cannot see, but there is a small yet elaborate fountain brought by the German Emperor William II in the 19th century, when he made an official visit to Istanbul to meet the Sultan over here. So it was brought in pieces, as well as a church organ and a couple of other things presented to him. That's not so important. But what is more important is one, and the 3rd pillar. These 3 pillars are significant. They were brought over here to add to the beauty of the town to start with. But they were brought from different areas, and one was erected over here. To start with, this Egyptian obelisk, as you can see, it's one solid piece. Some of you may have been to Egypt, to Luxor, Karnak temples, Luxor temple over there. Quite a lot of them still in situ. This is one of the high ones. As far as the shore down there, and pulled by the people. Pushing from one side to the other, everything they wrap around it, and the shore, it can be and the important or nice thing is, one of these somebody is mistaken by Mesopotamia, and two big rivers, Euphrates and Tigris, starting from Turkey, flowing down toward the Gulf area. You see where the battle took place a couple of years ago. So imagine this, the map of Middle East a little bit that way. So he went down that way toward the Gulf and crossed over the Euphrates River, successfully colonized the area. Upon his return, Amun-Ra, the highest god, is way up there. He is seated like on a throne, and the pharaoh is down on his knees making these offerings to him for his success of the battles and the colonization of the area, and such relevant scenes all over here.
Hello everyone, Betty and Marv here to remind you about the trips that we have coming up for this year, but you know what? We don't want to talk about that really.
We don't.
No, we want to talk about the stuff that we're planning for next year, for the year 2001.
Oh, Marv, we're just getting almost to a point where I've got things all in order now. We're going to plan for next year, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay,
Gotta
if you
plan a
say
year
so.
ahead, you know how
You
it
be
is.
the boss.
Anyway, we want to go back to China. And
Yes.
if you would like to go with us, why don't you give Betty a phone call and say, hey, I'm a candidate for China. We'll also, of course, go back to the Holy Land. We're thinking about England, Ireland, and Scotland, Turkey, and South America. So if any of those interest you, give Betty a call and say, hey, Betty, I'm interested in going on one of those trips.
We don't have the brochures yet. These are all in the making right now. We're fomenting for next year.
And so, if you, in fact, you might have an idea of places that you would like to go, that would give us an idea for the year 2001.
I'm probably talking too much like I always do, but you know why we're going to China? Is because we go up to Guilin and we take the cruise and we're going to go to the Three Gorges, and they're going to dam that up, and this will be the last time anybody will be able to see it within the next 3 years. So all of this magnificent part of China will be lost to everyone. So we want to get in there before this happens.
We want to see it before it's all covered with water.
And we want you to see it too.
Right. Give Betty a call at
488-7443.
Thank you.
Okay, couple of things, ladies and gentlemen, before we go inside. As you know, Islam was born in Saudi Arabia in 7th century AD. Prophet Muhammad being the prophet of the Islamic world. And it was born in Mecca, where we have this black stone Kaaba. And the first mosques were built over there. Turks, what happened to the Turks during that time? They were not here yet on this land, which we call Turkey today. Their background goes back to Central Asia, north of China, Mongolia, this Aral, Altai Mountains, etc. So as a result of this, they started migrating as of 7th century AD from that area, and then to famous Silk Road, which you know to be. They were the roots for the Turks. They settled in Afghanistan, Iran, etc. for a couple of centuries as they were nomads. Finally, they came over here to this present land, which used to be called Anatolia, or present-day Turkey, as you know it to be, in 11th century. But before they came into Anatolia, they already converted to Islam when they were in Afghanistan and Iran because of the Arab merchants going that way and for the reasons of trading, etc. So they were introduced to the faith of Islam and they converted. They were shaman in Central Asia. By the time they settled in Anatolia, they were all Muslims. This is important because actually, if you compare all the Islamic states, may it be a state in the Far East like Indonesia, Malaysia, or down in the Gulf area, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, or Turkey, most of these gigantic imperial mosques and the madrasas, schools of theology and science, were built by the Turks during the imperial times. Even in Saudi Arabia, the mosques are very small today. Such gigantic imperial mosques like you see. You saw also from the bust, the Mosque of Suleiman the Magnificent, and a few more of them. They were all built by the Turks. This is significant because the mosque, Jami in Arabic, is the place of worship and the house of Allah for the people.
Look for one down
It's only, the Turks that built such a gigantic mosques. Therefore, first it was closed by an outer courtyard, the way you came up, between the hippodrome and this wall over here is the outer courtyard. It's a huge courtyard. Usually this huge courtyard is surrounded by some social, economical and religious buildings, like a Turkish bath, like a library, like a hospital, some shops, essential part of life. You do business, you hear the chanting, you just close the door or just put a stool over there, meaning I'll be back very soon. You go into the mosque to pray. You have these beautiful tiles all around it, where the dominant color is a combination of blue and green. The tiles are original. These are, from early 17th century, especially in the 16th and 17th centuries, south of Istanbul, called Nicaea or Nicaea, where one of the ecumenical councils was held in earlier times, of course. That was the tile production center. All the craftsmen assembled over there for almost 2 centuries. Abi çabuk yap ne olur. Bunların zaten kulakları iyi duymuyor. For 2 centuries, it was the center for tile production.